Remember the ratio 2 to 3. So 2 to 3, what does it stand for? We'll get back to it later. But first, let's answer the question we ended last week's episode on. Why don't you draft a quarterback in the first round, since they score the most points? Here's the simple answer. Look at this draft board. If you take a quarterback in the first round and say a running back in the second round, your team's point value would be this number. Now, if you draft a running back in the first round, a quarterback in the second round, your team's point value would be higher than the first. This can be said about all the early rounds. So with this proof, not only is it not smart to draft a quarterback in the first round, but it's also not smart to draft a quarterback in any of the early rounds. So does this mean that who you draft fully depends on who the other drafters take? Even though you may deny it, the answer is always yes. You need to understand the players your opponents drafted as well as the players they're gonna draft before you can understand who you're gonna draft. So we've covered the players you're going to draft, right? We made a customized draft board to represent where the players are expected to be taken, but this is only a generalization. How can we elaborate more on this? By exploring the second variable of draft tracking, the players your opponents drafted. Welcome to the third episode of Fantasy Football Training Camp on the new Whiteboard Sports Channel. If you have not watched the first two episodes of our series, we recommend that you click on our channel and do so now. So yes, we are going to cover the second variable of draft tracking in depth today. Let's begin. So, 2 to 3. What does this ratio stand for? In a normal drafter's mind, it is expected to draft 2 running backs for every 3 receivers drafted. You commonly start 2 running backs and 3 receivers. You commonly draft a total of 4 running backs and 6 receivers. So on draft day, the 2 to 3 ratio should naturally be in everyone's head, including your opponents. How can you anticipate the picks of your opponents by using this ratio? By counting, or more specifically, positional counting. What is positional counting exactly? Say you have the 4th pick in an 8-team league. This way we can fit the draft board on the screen. There are 2 regions you need to know when counting. The first region includes the picks behind you. The second region includes the picks in front of you. Easy enough. Now, to actual counting. There are 2 types of positional counting, basic and advanced. You can get the basic counting method if you are more laid back and want to have fun or get distracted during the draft. Advanced counting is very intense and requires all your attention, but it will give you more accurate results. Let's get started with basic counting first. It's literally this easy when it's not your pick. When a running back is drafted, add 3 to your total count. When a receiver is drafted, subtract 2 from your total count. You will have 2 separate running counts, one for your first region and one for your second region. Never count your picks. When it's your 3rd pick and you have 2 running counts, examine the count of the region that will be picking after you. Divide this number by the quantity of 8 minus the round you're in. See what we mean? This will be your situational count. If the situational count is below 0, you will draft a receiver in the next round. If the situational count is above 1, you will draft a running back in the next round. If the situational count is between 0 and 1, it doesn't matter what position you take the next round, so it would be a good time to draft a quarterback or tight end in the next round. So what does positional counting determine? It determines if the draft board is above or below the standard running back to receiver ratio. Positional counting should be used during rounds 3 through 8, which is a part of the middle rounds. So you have the choice to use basic counting during your draft. This is possibly the most important method of draft tracking, so if you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask in the message board below. So that is basic counting in a nutshell. Now to advanced counting. There are 30 rules you need to know. You can memorize them, or a reference sheet will do the trick. Let's take a look at rule number 1. The letter R stands for running back. The letter W stands for receiver. This rule is saying that if a team has drafted 2 running backs and no receivers, then their next 2 picks should be a receiver and a receiver. How about rule number 2? The dash stands for running back or receiver. So this rule is saying that if a team has drafted 2 receivers and no running backs, then their next 2 picks should be a running back and either a receiver or running back. Let's skip to rule number 16. A 2- stands for most likely a running back, but possibly a receiver. So this rule says that if a team has drafted 2 running backs and 3 receivers, then their next 2 picks should be a receiver and most likely a running back, but possibly a receiver. And lastly, rule number 20. A -2 stands for most likely a receiver, but possibly a running back. So this rule says that if a team has drafted 2 running backs and 4 receivers, then their next 2 picks should be a running back and most likely a receiver, but possibly a running back. Since you know all the symbols now, here is the complete reference sheet. You can pause to copy this down, screenshot, take a picture, or do whatever you want with it. Now combining the results. Say you have the 4th pick in the 8-team draft as shown in this scenario. Team 1 has drafted 1 running back and 2 receivers. Team 2 has drafted 2 running backs and 1 receiver. And Team 3 has drafted 1 running back and 1 receiver. Now we will use the reference sheet to project what they will pick the next 2 rounds. So you have 2-2 for Team 1, W-2 for Team 2, and W- for Team 3. So now we'll have to combine the 3 results. A W and a W makes 2W. A -2 and a -2 makes 1W and 1 dash. If there is only 1 2-, convert it to an R. If there is only 1 -2, you can convert it to a W as well, but there isn't. So you have a total of 3 W's, 1 R, and 2 dashes. Now add the number of dashes to the W's and R's. So now you will have 5 W's and 3 R's. This means that a maximum of 5 receivers and 3 running backs should be taken before your next pick. Use this knowledge and make the smart selection. So that is advanced counting in a nutshell. In order to do this, you need to be really quick and focused. If you are not the best at numbers or math in general, we recommend that you take part in basic counting. So we have finished exploring the first 2 variables, so next week we will explore the 3rd and last variable, the players you are going to draft. Until then, you can practice counting with controlled mock drafts and take it easy. Think this week's episode of Fantasy Football Training Camp is over? Think again. This video may be coming to a close, but the message board is always open. Please, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, write to us in the message board and we will respond directly to you. With that said, please subscribe and tune in for our next episode coming at this time next week. See you then.